The morning Arthur Penfield missed his connecting flight in Denver, he wasn't thinking about kindness. He was thinking about a quarterly report due in 48 hours, a conference call he'd already rescheduled twice, and the fact that his dress shoes were cutting into his left heel in a way that made every step feel like a small punishment. He was not a man who missed flights. In 31 years of business travel, he had missed exactly one, a red-eye out of Boston in 2003, when a taxi driver took a wrong turn and then argued about it for 6 minutes on the side of the road. Arthur still thought about those 6 minutes sometimes. The particular agony of watching a clock and knowing mathematically that the outcome was already decided. This time it was weather. A front had stalled over the Rockies, and the flight from Sacramento came in 40 minutes late, and the gate for his connection to Chicago had already closed when he reached it. C-17, all the way at the end of a terminal that seemed designed to punish people who were already running. The gate agent looked at him with the practiced sympathy of someone who'd delivered this news 400 times before, and offered him a seat on the 6:40 evening departure. That was nearly 9 hours away. Arthur thanked her in the quiet, even way he thanked most people, without drama, without performance, and walked back down the terminal. He found a seat near the windows in a section that was mostly empty, set his carry-on beside him, and opened his laptop. He would work. That was what he did when circumstances moved against him. He didn't complain. He didn't spiral. He found the next fixed point and moved toward it. He had been working for perhaps 40 minutes when he noticed the woman. She was sitting on the floor, back against the wall beneath a bank of charging outlets, a child asleep across her lap. The child couldn't have been older than 4 or 5, a boy, by the look of him. Sneakers with a faded cartoon character on the side, one sock half fallen. The woman was awake. She was sitting very still in the way that people sit still when they are exhausted beyond the point where stillness offers any rest. Her coat was too heavy for the season. A single duffel bag sat between her feet, zipped shut, and she had both hands resting on the boy's back as though she was holding him in place. There were plenty of seats in that section. Arthur noticed that immediately, the way you notice something that doesn't quite add up. She wasn't sitting on the floor because there was nowhere else to go. She was sitting on the floor the way people sit when they have been down long enough that surfaces stop mattering. He looked at her, then looked away. He looked back at his screen. He read the same paragraph of a vendor contract 3 times without absorbing a word of it. He told himself it wasn't his business. He was a private man, and he had learned, across a long life, the difference between helping someone and inserting yourself into a situation that belongs to someone else. He believed in that difference. He believed in it firmly. He closed the laptop. He walked over to the vending area nearby, bought 2 bottles of water, a package of crackers, and a granola bar. He walked back. He stood a few feet from the woman, not wanting to startle her, and said quietly, "Excuse me." She looked up. She had dark circles beneath her eyes that spoke of days, not just one night. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe late 20s, maybe 30, and her expression when she looked at him was the guarded, measured expression of someone who had learned to assess strangers quickly. "I'm sorry to bother you," Arthur said. "I just thought you might want something to eat." She looked at what he was holding. Something shifted in her face, not quite relief, not quite distrust, something in between. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was steadier than he expected. He set the things down beside her bag and turned to go. He had done what he'd come to do. He was not trying to make a moment out of it. "Sir," she said. He turned. "Would you?" She stopped, started again. "Do you have somewhere to be right now? Or could you sit for a minute?" He looked at her. He looked at the sleeping boy. "I have approximately 8.5 hours, he said. "I missed my connection." Something that might have been a small, tired smile crossed her face. "Me too," she said, sort of. His name was Arthur Penfield. He was 58 years old. He sat down on the floor beside a woman he did not know in a Denver airport terminal, and he listened to her talk. Her name was Colleen Marsh. She was 31, and the boy asleep on her lap was her son, Marcus, who was 4. They had been in the airport for going on 11 hours. She told him this without self-pity, which he respected. She laid out the facts the way someone lays out a series of broken objects, carefully, so you can see what you're dealing with. Their flight from Albuquerque had been delayed, then canceled. The airline had rebooked them on a flight to Pittsburgh the following morning. She had enough money in her account. She paused when she said this, a fractional pause, the kind that contains a larger truth. For Marcus's dinner tonight and a meal tomorrow. Not enough for the airport hotel they'd offered her at a discounted rate of $98. She was going to Pittsburgh because her mother was there. Her mother had a spare room and a steady job, and had been asking Colleen to come for 8 months. She had finally packed what fit in one duffel bag and bought the tickets on a credit card that was nearly maxed out, and she had gotten as far as Denver. "Why didn't you come sooner?" Arthur asked. He asked it the way he asked most questions. Directly, without cushioning, but not unkindly. Colleen looked at Marcus. He had shifted in his sleep, one hand curled near his face. "Pride," she said, "which is a stupid reason, but there it is." Arthur nodded slowly. He understood pride. He understood it more than he would have liked to admit. He asked a few more questions, practical ones, the kind he was comfortable with. What airline? What the rebooking confirmation said. Whether she had anything she needed for Marcus tonight. She answered all of them with the same direct economy. She was not performing helplessness, and she was not pretending she needed less than she did. She was just telling him the situation. After a while, Marcus woke up. He looked at Arthur the way small children look at unfamiliar adults, with an evaluating seriousness that is somehow more thorough than most adult assessments. Then he reached into his mother's coat pocket, produced a small green toy truck, and held it out toward Arthur in a gesture that wasn't quite an offering and wasn't quite a question. "That's a good truck," Arthur said. "It has a crane," Marcus said. "I can see that." Marcus pulled it back and studied the crane with renewed focus, apparently satisfied that Arthur had understood the important thing. Arthur Penfield had grown up in a small town in western Pennsylvania, the son of a man who repaired small engines for a living, and a woman who worked the morning shift at a diner for 30 years. He had put himself through state school, then through a night MBA while working days at a manufacturing company in Pittsburgh. He had built 3 companies across 4 decades. He had sold the second for enough money that he didn't need to work anymore, and he had started the third anyway, because he didn't know what else to do with himself. He lived alone now, in a house in Sacramento that was too large for one person, and that he had never gotten around to furnishing properly. His daughter lived in Chicago. That was where he was trying to get. He visited twice a year. They talked on the phone every Sunday, conversations that were warm but careful, the way conversations between parents and adult children often are once enough years have passed. He was not a man who told his story unprompted, but sitting on the floor of a Denver airport terminal, with a small boy examining the crane mechanism of a toy truck beside him, he found himself saying more than usual. He told Colleen about the house in Sacramento. He told her that he'd bought it thinking he'd fill it eventually and hadn't. He told her, in passing, about the quarterly report waiting for him on his laptop, and she asked what kind of business it was, and he said logistics and supply chain consulting in a tone that communicated, accurately, that the details weren't interesting enough to elaborate on. She laughed, a short, real laugh, the first one he'd heard from her. "You say that like it's embarrassing," she said. "It's not embarrassing," he said. "It's just not interesting to talk about. My ex used to talk about his work constantly," she said. "It was never interesting either, but he never noticed." Arthur said nothing. He had learned across many years of listening that silence is often the most useful response when someone is deciding how much to say. But she didn't continue in that direction. She looked at the window, at the flat gray light of the afternoon, and said, "I just want to get him there. That's all I'm thinking about right now." Marcus had fallen asleep again, this time with his head against Arthur's arm the toy truck loosely held. Arthur looked down at the boy. He had not been around small children in a long time. The weight of the child's head against his arm was something he hadn't expected to feel in any particular way. He felt it anyway. At 2:30, Arthur stood up, told Colleen he would be back in a few minutes, and walked to the nearest airline service desk. He was in line for 7 minutes. When he reached the counter, he explained the situation. Woman traveling with a young child, rebooked on tomorrow morning's flight, insufficient funds for the hotel, with the same measured efficiency he brought to any logistical problem. He produced his credit card. He booked one night at the airport hotel. He asked the agent to print a confirmation and a note explaining the room was fully paid. He walked back, sat down, and handed Colleen the folded paper. She opened it. Read it again. "I can't accept this," she said. You can, Arthur said. This is, she stopped. She was holding the paper with both hands, and he could see them tighten slightly. I don't understand why you would do this. You need a place for your son to sleep, Arthur said. I have the means to provide it, and it costs me nothing meaningful. That's the entire logic of it. She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were bright in a way that had nothing to do with tears but was adjacent to them. I'll pay you back, she said. You don't have to. I will, she said. I mean it. He believed her. He also knew it didn't matter either way. Marcus, who had woken during this exchange, was looking between the two of them with the grave attention of someone trying to follow a conversation in a language they almost understand. Are we going somewhere? He asked. To a hotel, baby, Colleen said. Her voice had changed, softer, with something released in it. To sleep in a real bed tonight. Marcus considered this. Does it have a pool? Arthur looked at him. I didn't ask, he said seriously. Marcus accepted this as a fair answer. They walked together to the hotel shuttle pickup. Arthur carried the duffel bag because Colleen was carrying Marcus, who had decided abruptly that his legs no longer worked. At the curb, Colleen shifted Marcus to her other hip and turned to face Arthur. Thank you, she said. I don't know what to say beyond that. Then that's enough, Arthur said. Can I ask you something? He nodded. Why does someone like you sit on the floor of an airport terminal for 3 hours? He thought about it. He thought about it genuinely, which was the only way he knew how to think about things. I think I was tired of the laptop, he said. She laughed again, that same short, real sound. It was a good laugh, the kind that doesn't ask for anything. The shuttle arrived. She got on. Marcus waved at Arthur from the window with the toy truck, moving the crane mechanism as though demonstrating its capabilities one final time. Arthur raised a hand. He walked back to the terminal. The 6:40 flight to Chicago was delayed 20 minutes, then boarded without further incident. Arthur took his window seat, declined the drink service, and stared out at the dark ramp below while the plane filled around him. He thought about the quarterly report. He thought about Sunday's call with his daughter, and whether he would mention this day. He thought about the look on Colleen's face when she read the hotel confirmation. That particular expression of someone receiving something they had not allowed themselves to need until it arrived. He had not felt useful in a long time, not in the way that mattered. He had felt competent. He had felt productive. Those were different things, and he knew it, and he had known it for a while without quite letting himself examine it. The plane pushed back. The lights of Denver shrank below as they climbed, and Arthur watched them until they disappeared into cloud. He had given a stranger a hotel room. He had sat on a floor for 3 hours. He had let a 4-year-old sleep against his arm and had confirmed, with complete seriousness, that he had not thought to ask about the pool. It was not much. He was not telling himself it was much. But he kept thinking about the paper in Colleen's hands, and the way she'd read it twice, and the way Marcus had waved the truck out the window. He kept thinking about that. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, Arthur was in his office in Sacramento when his assistant brought him a piece of mail that had been forwarded from his home address. A standard white envelope, handwritten, return address somewhere in Pittsburgh. He opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, 2 pages, in the careful, slightly formal handwriting of someone who had rewritten it more than once. Colleen told him they had made the morning flight, that her mother had been waiting at arrivals with a sign that said, Marcus and Mama, welcome home, which made Marcus extremely proud, that she had started a job the previous week. Not the job she wanted, but a job which was the necessary first step, that Marcus had, in fact, asked the hotel about the pool and been disappointed to learn it was only for summer. At the bottom, there was a folded check, a modest amount, less than the hotel had cost, and she said so, noted it was the first installment, that she understood if he said not to bother. He read the letter twice. He set the check on his desk and looked at it for a while. He was a man who had moved large amounts of money across decades, signed documents that transferred more zeros than most people saw in their lives. He could not explain precisely why this particular check, this particular amount, in this particular handwriting, landed on him the way it did. He thought about cashing it, about not cashing it, about what she had said, I will, I mean it, and the specific quality of a person who means what they say. He decided to cash it, not because he needed it, but because she meant it. Because the meaning of a thing and the money of a thing are not always the same, and he knew how to tell the difference. He wrote back, a shorter letter than hers. He was not a long letter writer, but he told her that Marcus had been right about the crane, that it was a very good truck. He called his daughter that Sunday, same as always. She asked how he was, and he said fine, and she asked about work, and he said it was moving along. Then she asked, "Did anything interesting happen this week?" He was quiet for a moment. "I got a letter from Pittsburgh," he said. "Who do you know in Pittsburgh?" "A woman I met in Denver 3 weeks ago." A pause. "Dad," his daughter said, and her voice had in it the particular mixture of curiosity and concern that adult children develop for solitary parents. "Do you want to tell me about that?" He did. He told her about the missed flight, and the floor, and the boy with the truck. He told her about the hotel, and the letter, and the check, and what he'd decided to do with it. She was quiet when he finished. Not the uncomfortable kind of quiet, the other kind. "That sounds like you," she said finally. "You know that? That sounds exactly like you." He didn't know exactly what she meant by that, but he thought it was something good. The next morning he was in his office by 7. He had a call at 8, a document to review before noon, and a flight to Chicago at the end of the month that he was already prepared to be early for. But before he opened his laptop, he sat for a moment in the quiet of his office and thought about a floor in Denver and a sleeping child and the particular weight of a head against an arm. Then he opened the laptop. He worked.